Life requires energy. We can power American cities within a solar budget by 2020. There's a great quote from Thomas Edison in 1910 that lays out how this can be accomplished. We got in infrastructure trouble in the mobilization to fight World War I. The federal government monopolized communications and socialized power and transportation as natural monopolies. The result was we got a century of rotary telephones, ever more dependence on the central grid, and we still have the gas mileage of a Model T. Essentially, government planners strive for consistency above all else. Innovation and excellence are consistency failures. Fortunately, in 1984, the federal courts recognized that monopoly control by the federal government over communications infrastructure was unconstitutional and returned it to free markets. The result was long dormant technologies like the internet and radio telephones were able to commercialize into 10x disruptive technologies that resulted in millions of jobs, vast innovation, and better service at lower cost. That can be repeated in power and transportation. There is 10x opportunities everywhere. We can change the lifeblood of our economy from oil to ingenuity. Mobilizing to fight World War I, the federal government monopolized transportation and power and communications as natural monopolies. It went so far as to push cars as a solution for prosperity in the 1928 presidential campaign. The 1956 Federal Aid to Highways Act institutionalized oil as the lifeblood of the American economy. It subsidized transportation by highways to such an extent that tens of thousands of miles of railroads were lost. Urban sprawl essentially mandates that you must own a car to keep and have a job in America. Our need for imported oil is so intense, 60% of needs, that it is linked to our national security. So, counting no-fly zones, from 1990, U.S. military forces have been daily engaged in the defense of foreign oil. The auto companies were so in debt and so mismanaged their business that in 2009 they needed billions of dollars of bailout. This is socialism, federal control over the means of production. It has created massive debt and peak oil. It is going to be very difficult for federal officials to give up their ability to tax us. So the duty to change transportation infrastructure to self-reliance falls to us. The federal Constitution is incredibly clear about the duty of the federal government. It mandates that we provide defense. It limits the federal government to promoting welfare. America's founders recognized that great harm could be done in the name of doing small goods. So it limited taxing for welfare to the states and to the people. It mandates that we secure liberty for ourselves and our posterity. That means that we cannot deplete oil. We cannot, any one time when we see somebody say, there's 100 years of coal or there's 100 years of oil, we should be terrified of what in the world are our great-grandchildren going to do. It limits government to regulating, not controlling the means of production, not managing transportation, not funding transportation. That is for private enterprise to do within an innovative environment. Oil is finite. Add up the output from all the oil fields in the U.S. and you will find that we hit peak oil in 1970. Even the large development of Prudhoe Bay could not stop for long the downhill cascade. It will continue to assure oil famine's certainty by about 2020. The federal government's response to depleting U.S. oil resources has been to implement a policy of oil imports. We now have a monolithic dependence on a source of energy 60% outside of our control, setting up oil's potato famine potential. Notice the large burst of energy consumption after the '73 oil embargo. We currently face a choice. Do we use the last affordable oil resources to transition to sustainable infrastructure now, or deplete them and give the people of the 2020 timeframe the responsibility to transition to sustainable infrastructure without the resources to do so? Worse yet, the federal government has implemented a policy of socializing costs into national debt, costs of wars to defend foreign oil, DOE, DOT personnel and their pensions, debt costs, depletion costs. The number of costs that combine into the need for imported oil can be seen in the correlation between national debt and oil imports. So debt is a tax on future labor. So what we are doing is effectively, children can't vote, so we are doing taxation without representation by pushing our debts, our consumption, onto their future labor. The net policy of government control over the means of productions is a tax on future labor, oil famine's potential, and an oil famine certainty as U.S. production of oil depletes. We can end socialism and end federal control over the means of transportation networks. There are 10x transportation networks already known and that can already be deployed. Freight rail averages almost 500 ton miles per gallon. The Morgantown Personal Rapid Transit System has delivered 110 million oil-free, injury-free passenger miles. J-Pod networks are so efficient that solar collectors over the top of the rails gather 5,000 to 30,000 vehicle miles of power per mile of rail per day. It costs about 56 cents a mile to operate a car. It costs about 4 cents a mile to operate J-Pods. It is that cost savings that allows private capital to build networks that can power people and cities within a solar budget. ET3 provides evacuated tube transport on meg levitation. So like the high-speed rails, only these are personal vehicles that go up to 4,000 miles per hour for transportation of goods and services between cities. We do not have a transportation or an energy problem. We have government operating outside of its authority of the Constitution and controlling the means of production instead of regulating it. Life requires energy. By 2020, given a free market, we can power America within a solar budget.